And welcome back. Now, the recent spate of attacks on foreign nationals once again came under the spotlight during President Cyril Ramaphosa and his Nigerian counterpart, Muhammadu Buhari's engagements yesterday as part of President Buhari's state visit to South Africa. The two presidents agreed that there should be measures put in place in order to prevent such attacks so as to alleviate any challenges in the quest to boost trade between Nigeria and South Africa. A number of agreements that will further strengthen ties in trade and industry have also been signed. Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana of the South African Council of Churches, he's the General Secretary of that organization, joins us now from our SABC studios in Pretoria to discuss this matter. Bishop, thank you so much for your time and welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Bishop, so much has been said about this particular phenomenon that we are discussing, whether it's been called criminality, whether it's been called xenophobia, Afrophobia. The problem is that we have seen this before, it has recurred, and what should be done at this stage in order to prevent it from ever recurring again?
That's a big question that everyone should be asking. I might just start off by saying that the South African Council of Churches has established a small task team to try and answer that very question: what must be done for it never to recur? But and of course, we are inviting people to to talk to us and give us any representations they have. And I'll give you a number to be used for that at the end. But this has it happened in 2008. It happened in 2015. It's happened this year. And I think the truth is, and everybody will say, that South Africans generally are not xenophobic. I think that's an established fact. We've always lived with foreign nationals in South Africa. Johannesburg is an immigrant city. But there are certain factors that need to be considered in order to ensure that this doesn't recur. One of those is the fact that in the past, foreign Africans coming to South Africa have always been professionals who would be at the universities and places like that. But in the last 25 years, there has been an influx of poor South Africans into the periphery of the cities, of course, because we no longer have the influx control regulations. And these people are struggling to make a living. Now, we also have foreign Africans who are coming into that space, also not as professionals necessarily, but as poor Africans who are also coming to compete for resources in that limited space. And so that sort of changes the environment. And so unless we are able to deal effectively with what is called inclusive growth, that ensures that these densely populated communities can find a living without looking for competition with an outsider, that this person is eating at my opportunities. I think that's just one of the factors. And the other is that, and this is also true, that there are serious criminal syndicates, particularly of Nigerian citizens, particularly of that party. They happen in other parts of the world as well, but in South Africa, this is a criminality that has also involved the capture of some of our police establishments. And I know this is this for a fact, because we have had at the Council of Churches to deal with people that have come to us to try to be rescued out of these clutches. But also, when we inquired at JP hostel in 2015, the hostel dwellers pointed to the shops in their neighborhood and said, that shop and that shop and that shop actually sells bread and milk in the front, but at the back, here's what is happening. We've been telling the police to do this, they turn a blind eye. Why? Because some of the police have been corrupted. So it's a matter of our own corruption, of our own policing system, and that needs to be cleaned up. So I say that there are four things that need to happen. One is that we need to clean up deal with the corruption in our own justice system, not rather the policing system. Secondly, we need to differentiate between crime and general xenophobia, as it may be called. And thirdly, we need to make sure that we deal with the poverty in our communities, because that leads to this perception is studies have said that about 62% of South Africans believe that their opportunities are taken away by foreign nationals. That's a huge number of perception. A similar number says that foreign nationals are responsible for crime in South Africa more than anyone else. That cannot be true, but that is a perception. So we need to deal with those things. Otherwise, these great discussions between the presidents are not going to get us verified. It is true that South Africa needs Nigeria as much as Nigeria needs South Africa. It's good for the country in terms of our business. But I'm also glad that both presidents seemed to have talked about the need for foreign nationals to observe the laws of our country and to make sure that everyone behaves. I remember the Nigerian president actually said, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. It is actually very important that all foreigners in South Africa behave in a way that is in keeping with the laws of our land, but also South Africans need to make sure that they do not make themselves prey by being captured by foreign structures.
Bishop, just to go back to what you spoke about, the realities on the ground, and many people have said that government has actually mischaracterized what the actual problem is and what is leading to these attacks on foreign nationals. So given government's overall response to the problem, do you believe that they have the correct handle on the matter?
Government has a number of responsibilities. One of them is to keep good relationships with other countries. That's something that ordinary Malusi in Pretoria does not necessarily have to deal with. And so there are a number of factors that government has to keep, considerations that they have to have, and it is untenable for South Africa to be seen to be anti other Africans in South Africa. You might actually, it actually can get quite serious if these perceptions are not dealt with. So the government is doing the right thing in that regard, because there was a time when South Africa was a polecat. There was a time when South African airways could not overfly African countries. And we wouldn't want to get back to those days where, because of apartheid, the African countries turned against this country, rightly so. If they did that this time, it would be really an embarrassment and a scandal. And I think that's what the government has in mind. But also, it is also true that it is good for our economy for us to have good relations with the neighboring countries across the continent. That having been said, we also need to deal with the perceptions that people have and their own understanding of reality on the ground. And I think that it is a matter of bringing these two together and making South Africans understand why South African government would need to almost bend over backwards as far as other countries are concerned. But at the same time, they must deal with what people experience and what they see as happening in their communities, and not be distant from that, as they may be the understanding that because presidents travel over, overfly our communities, they may not be aware of what we're dealing with on the ground. But churches do, and we are dealing with this. It does not help also that there is a lot of entrepreneurial churches in our country that are sort of presented as foreign ministries, if you like, of churches that are coming into the country with exploitative processes of religion. We also have South Africans who do that, but when it's a foreign national doing it, people always say that is part of the problem of having foreign nationals.
So at the heart of all of this is the scramble for economic opportunity. President Buhari, during his statement, said that they are committed to address the economic challenges, facing those in both countries. But what would that look like? What needs to be done in this regard?
I think that President Buhari obviously would do well to take care of, the economic needs of Nigerian citizens in Nigeria. But in South Africa, my view is that, and this is a study that the South African Council of Churches and other civil society organizations have done, and we published what we call a civil society manifesto that talks about healing and reconciliation, economic transformation, anchoring democracy that deals with corruption, as well as comprehensive quality education, which deals with the equipping of and empowering of people to be able to take advantage of economic opportunities. But we need to really get to this community of people that are struggling in the periphery of the cities. That, if we're not doing that, all the macroeconomic issues are not going to get us anywhere. We have to say, how do you get the local economy functional in a way that you know, look at the foreign nationals that are coming to do business there. They come with skills to do business, and you need to be able to say how those skills can also measure up with the efforts of South Africans and make sure that the economy at the community level, not the big economy, the local economy, the production of bread, the production of goods and services, that South Africans are enabled to participate in those in a meaningful way. There might also be a way, and we're suggesting some of these, that there is a partnership between small-scale production at the community level and big-time production. For example, every factory in this country uses uniforms, and our textile industry has collapsed. Now, what would it take to have a company that employs 1,000 people, that issues five uniforms a year? That is about 5,000 uniforms. 5,000 uniforms for those. If you had those, a local community producing those uniforms, it would mean that you are partnering the local community with a big factory out there, so that people don't have to flee rural poverty and out-migrate to urban squalor. So some of these things need to be dealt with effectively, and we think we can work together with communities and municipalities to make a difference using the IDP.
Now, Bishop, let's also just address the perceptions that you spoke about earlier. South Africans hold many perceptions which in part drive some of the attitudes that they have towards foreign nationals. How do we address those in a meaningful way? How do we go about it in the age of digital media, where people circulate all sorts of news and misrepresentations on social media platforms, and it just spreads like wildfire? How do we address those issues?
I have received a number of those myself. They will always go with abantu bokufika. These are the kind of newcomers, if you like. But what we are really saying is that let's get the people that are having those perceptions talking. Because if you don't get them talking and engage so that you understand where they are coming from and deal with their concerns, you are not going to remove the problem. They will continue to feed those social media. And that is the reason why we are inviting people to talk to us. In the same way that we have talked to the hostel dwellers, we have a sense of where they're coming from. We have already engaged with Santaco to say we would like to talk to the taxi association. We would like to talk to the truck drivers. Can you imagine if our truck drivers are prevented from crossing by bridge, and companies that are using our port in Durban have to employ a new driver for every country they are crossing? It will kill the business of the Durban port. And so these are some of the things that we need to discuss and be able to say, all right, let's deal with the challenges as best we can, but get to the bottom of it. We're not going to deal with this by just talking to foreign governments only without getting to the bottom of what our people are feeling on the ground.
So going back to where we started this conversation, Bishop, and again, how do we prevent this from recurring? Because we said this in 2008, then there were a series of minor, but then again a bit of a major flare-up some years later, and it's 2019, we're having the same conversation. What do we need to do?
What is common about those, Sakina, is that in each of those instances, there never was a follow-through, serious engagement with communities on these issues. It was only some civil society organizations doing that. We need a much more comprehensive engagement at the community level. If it doesn't happen, the people will stay with their perceptions, they will stand down for a moment and flare up again. I think we need to get to the bottom of it, talk to the people, get the people to understand what needs to be done, and you need to get, then government must be responsive. That's all we're trying to broker at this time when we're saying, let us engage these conversations. In fact, we've asked for a meeting with the security cluster as well, especially because police are seriously implicated in many of these communities where they themselves are party to the atrocities.
But in practical terms, what would that look like? Who exactly would be responsible for going down to the people and initiating and having those discussions across the land?
Well, because the churches have no, we cannot not be at the communities. That's why we started the process. But it's a process that should not really be our process. It ought to be a governmental process. But right now, the churches have started it, and we're calling for civil society organizations that are always concerned about these matters to continue to do so. And we'll bring our evidence to the, to the government, and that's why we've asked for conversations with the security cluster. We'll be meeting with Home Affairs, with Police Department, as well as the presidency. But what we're doing as churches now is simply what we can do. But ideally, it should be something that has town hall conversations that municipalities are hosting because the communities are under municipal authority.
Well, Bishop, thank you so much. We're going to leave it there. And Bishop,
I guess I should put in a request for people to actually communicate with us if you let me do that. Sakina.
Absolutely, please go ahead.
Yes, send an email to Lutando, Luthando, at sacc.org.za, or call 011-241-7800 at the South African Council of Churches. The task team on this violence is active at this time. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana, the General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, and talking to us about Nigerian President Buhari's visit to South Africa and the implications, of course, taking into consideration the context in which this visit actually took place. Let's take a break.